Facts about Hinduism to fall asleep to. Welcome. Find a comfortable position, let your breathing slow, and prepare to journey back through time to discover one of the world's most ancient and profound spiritual traditions. Fact 1. Hinduism is the world's oldest living religion, with roots stretching back more than 4,000 years, and possibly much further. Unlike other major world religions, it has no single founder, no one prophet who stood up and declared a new faith. Instead, it emerged organically from the spiritual practices and philosophical insights of the ancient peoples of the Indian subcontinent, evolving slowly like a great river gathering tributaries along its course. Fact 2. The tradition we now call Hinduism wasn't originally known by that name at all. The term Hindu comes from the Persian word for the Indus River, Sindhu, which became Hindu in Persian pronunciation. Foreign visitors used this geographic term to describe the people living beyond the Indus, and eventually it came to describe their religious practices. The practitioners themselves have historically used terms like Sanatan Dharma, meaning the eternal way or the eternal order, to describe their spiritual path. Imagine the landscape where this ancient tradition began to take shape. Picture the fertile plains of the Indus Valley around 2500 BCE, where sophisticated cities rose from the earth. Fact 3. The Indus Valley Civilization, one of the world's earliest urban cultures, flourished in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Archaeological excavations at sites like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro have revealed carefully planned cities with advanced drainage systems, public baths, and granaries. Among the artifacts discovered there, small seals, figurines, and pottery, scholars have found tantalizing hints of proto-Hindu religious practices, including figures seated in yogic postures and images that may represent early forms of Shiva. As this civilization mysteriously declined around 1500 BCE, another cultural force was taking shape. Between approximately 1500 and 1200 BCE, the oldest sacred texts of Hinduism began to take form. These are the Vedas, and their name comes from the Sanskrit word vid, meaning to know. The Vedas are considered shruti, meaning that which is heard, eternal truths that were not composed by humans but revealed to ancient sages, or rishis, during deep states of meditation. These wise seers perceived cosmic truths and transmitted them orally with extraordinary precision, passed down through generations in an unbroken chain of teacher to student. Fact 5. There are 4 Vedas in total: the Rig Veda, the Yajurveda, the Samaveda, and the Atharva Veda. The Rig Veda, the oldest, contains 1028 hymns dedicated to various deities and cosmic forces. These hymns are poetic, profound, and filled with questions about existence itself. Who truly knows how creation began? What force set the universe in motion? The ancient composers of these verses weren't afraid to dwell in mystery, to sit with the unknown. Fact 6. The Vedas were preserved through an oral tradition of remarkable sophistication. For thousands of years before they were written down, these texts were memorized and recited with absolute precision. Priests developed elaborate systems to ensure not a single syllable was lost. They would recite verses forward and backward, rearrange word orders and use multiple verification methods. This oral preservation was so successful that the Vedic texts we have today are virtually identical to those chanted over 3 millennia ago. As you rest, imagine the sound of these ancient chants, voices carrying knowledge across centuries. Fact 7. The early Vedic religion centered on ritual sacrifices and the worship of natural forces personified as deities. Agni, the god of fire, carried offerings to the heavens. Indra, the warrior god of rain and thunder, battled demons and brought life-giving storms. Surya, the sun god, crossed the sky each day in his chariot. These weren't distant, abstract forces. They were intimate presences in daily life, the sacred within the natural world. Over time, the tradition evolved and deepened. Between 800 and 200 BCE, a new collection of texts emerged, composed by philosophers who retreated to forests to contemplate existence. These texts are called the Upanishads, meaning sitting down near, as students would sit near their teachers to receive wisdom. The Upanishads mark a profound shift in Hindu thought, from external ritual to internal realization, from many gods to an underlying unity, from sacrifice to meditation. They ask the deepest questions. What is the nature of the self? What is ultimate reality? How can we know the truth of existence? And here, in these forest teachings, we find one of Hinduism's most revolutionary ideas. Fact 9. The Upanishads introduce the concept of Brahman, the ultimate, unchanging reality that underlies all existence. Brahman is not a god in the conventional sense, not a being separate from creation, but the infinite, eternal ground of all being itself. Everything that exists is a manifestation of Brahman, and within each individual being lives Atman, the inner self or soul, which the Upanishads teach is ultimately identical to Brahman. Tat tvamasi, the sages declared, that thou art. The divine you seek is not distant, it is your deepest nature. Let this thought settle over you like a gentle blanket as we continue our journey through this ancient, ever-unfolding tradition. Breathe slowly. Let your mind drift along this river of wisdom as we continue our exploration. Fact 10. Alongside these profound philosophical developments, the concept of karma began to crystallize in Hindu thought. Karma, from the Sanskrit root kri, meaning to do or to act, refers to the principle that every action has consequences. Not just in a simple cause and effect sense, but in a moral and spiritual dimension that ripples across time. Good actions create positive karma, difficult actions create negative karma, and this accumulated karma shapes not only your current life, but your future existences as well. It's a universe of perfect moral balance, where nothing is random and everything has meaning. Fact 11. Intimately connected to karma is the concept of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Hindu philosophy teaches that the soul is eternal and moves through many lifetimes, taking on different bodies the way we might change clothes. The Bhagavad Gita, a later sacred text, beautifully expresses this. Just as a person casts off worn-out garments and puts on new ones, so does the soul cast off worn-out bodies and enter into new ones. Your karma from past lives influences your current circumstances, and your actions now shape future births. This cycle continues until the soul achieves liberation. Picture now a time when these ideas were being woven into stories, into epics that would captivate generations. Fact 12. Between approximately 400 BCE and 400 CE, two of the world's longest epic poems were composed in Sanskrit. The Mahabharata contains about 1.8 million words, making it roughly 10 times the length of the Iliad and Odyssey combined. The Ramayana, shorter but still vast, contains 24,000 verses. These weren't just entertainment, they were vehicles for teaching dharma, the righteous way of living. Through the adventures of heroes and gods, through tales of love and war, duty and betrayal, these epics explored every dimension of human existence. Fact 15. The Mahabharata tells the story of a great war between two branches of a royal family, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, fighting for control of a kingdom. But embedded within this epic, just before the climactic battle begins, is one of Hinduism's most beloved sacred texts, the Bhagavad Gita, or Song of God. In this moment of crisis, the warrior prince Arjuna loses his nerve on the battlefield, overwhelmed by the thought of fighting his own relatives. His chariot driver, who is actually the god Krishna in disguise, offers him counsel that addresses the deepest questions of existence. What is duty? What is the self? How should we live? As you rest, imagine Arjuna and Krishna, their conversation unfolding between two armies frozen in anticipation. Fact 14. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches Arjuna about different paths to spiritual liberation, or moksha. There is karma yoga, the path of selfless action, performing your duty without attachment to results. There is bhakti yoga, the path of devotion, loving surrender to the divine. There is jnana yoga, the path of knowledge, understanding the true nature of reality through wisdom and meditation. And there is raja yoga, the path of meditation and mental discipline. These aren't competing paths, but different routes up the same mountain, each suited to different temperaments and personalities. This flexibility, this acknowledgement that different people need different approaches, becomes a hallmark of Hindu spirituality. The Ramayana tells the story of Prince Rama, an avatar or earthly incarnation of the god Vishnu, who is exiled from his kingdom and must rescue his wife Sita after she is abducted by the demon king Ravana. It's a tale of love, loyalty, honor, and the eternal battle between good and evil. But it's also a meditation on dharma, on what it means to be a good son, a faithful husband, a just king, a loyal brother. Rama is held up as the ideal man, one who follows dharma even when it requires tremendous personal sacrifice. His story has been retold countless times across South and Southeast Asia, adapted into different languages, art forms, and cultural contexts, yet the essential teachings remain. Fact 16. Around the same period these epics were being composed, the Hindu understanding of the divine was also evolving and expanding. A trinity of major deities emerged as central to worship: Brahma the creator, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the destroyer. But this destruction isn't merely negative. Shiva destroys so that new creation can occur, clearing away the old to make space for the new. Together, these three gods represent the eternal cosmic cycle: creation, preservation, and dissolution, repeated endlessly throughout time. Yet even this trinity is understood as different aspects of the one ultimate reality, Brahman, different faces of the infinite. Fact 17. Vishnu, the preserver, is believed to descend to earth in different forms, called avatars, whenever dharma is in decline and evil threatens to overwhelm good. The tradition recognizes 10 major avatars of Vishnu, including Rama and Krishna, whom we've already encountered. There's also Matsya the fish, who saved humanity from a great flood, Kurma the tortoise, who helped churn the cosmic ocean, and Narasimha, the half-man, half-lion, who protected a devoted child. The 10th avatar, Kalki, is yet to come, a warrior on a white horse who will appear at the end of the current age to restore righteousness. These stories speak to a deep faith that the divine doesn't abandon creation but continually intervenes to restore balance. Let your breathing slow even more as we reflect on these timeless cycles. Fact 18. Shiva, the destroyer and transformer, is one of Hinduism's most complex and fascinating deities. He is depicted as the great yogi, meditating in the Himalayas, his body smeared with ash, a cobra coiled around his neck. He is Nataraja, the cosmic dancer, whose dance maintains the rhythm of the universe, 1 foot raised, arms gracefully positioned, dancing within a ring of fire. He is both the ascetic, who has renounced the world, and the passionate householder, married to the goddess Parvati. He contains contradictions, embraces paradoxes, and reminds us that the divine transcends our simple categories of good and bad, creation and destruction, engagement and renunciation. In Shiva, all opposites meet. Rest now in this understanding, as our journey continues through the many dimensions of this ancient faith. Let yourself sink deeper into relaxation as we continue our gentle journey through the sacred traditions of Hinduism. Fact 19. The divine feminine holds a central and powerful place in Hindu tradition through the worship of Devi, the goddess. She appears in many forms, as Durga, the warrior goddess riding a tiger, as Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity and fortune, as Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and the arts, and as Kali, the fierce destroyer of evil. Unlike religious traditions where the divine is exclusively or primarily male, Hinduism recognizes that ultimate reality encompasses both masculine and feminine principles. Shakti, the divine feminine energy, is understood as the dynamic force that animates the universe, while the masculine principle represents pure consciousness. Together, they form a complete whole. Fact 20. This understanding of complementary opposites extends throughout Hindu philosophy in the concept of duality and non-duality. The tradition recognizes that we experience the world through pairs of opposites: pleasure and pain, light and darkness, birth and death, hot and cold. Yet these dualities are not absolute. They're different points on a continuum, and both arise from the same underlying unity. a school of Hindu philosophy called Advaita Vedanta, which emerged around the 8th century CE through the teachings of the philosopher Adi Shankaracharya, takes this further by teaching that all apparent separateness is ultimately illusion, or Maya. There is only one reality, Brahman, and the perception of multiplicity is like seeing a rope in dim light and mistaking it for a snake. Picture now the countless temples that began to emerge across the Indian subcontinent, physical expressions of these divine principles. Fact 21. Hindu temple architecture developed into a sophisticated sacred science. Temples aren't merely buildings, but are conceived as dwelling places for the divine, constructed according to precise geometric and astronomical principles outlined in ancient texts called the Shilpa Shastras. The temple structure itself represents the cosmos in miniature. The innermost sanctuary, or Garbhagriha, represents the cave of the heart where the divine resides. The towering spire above, called the Shikara or Vimana, represents the cosmic mountain, Mount Meru, the axis of the universe connecting Earth to the heavens. To walk through a Hindu temple is to journey from the outer material world toward the inner spiritual core. Within these temples, worship takes the form of puja, a ritual of devotion that engages all the senses. The deity is treated not as a distant, abstract concept, but as an honored guest, a living presence made accessible through a consecrated image or murti. Devotees offer flowers, whose beauty and fragrance delight the senses. They wave lamps before the deity in a ceremony called arti, the flames representing the element of fire and the removal of darkness. They ring bells to awaken the divine and announce their presence. They offer food, which is later returned as prasad, blessed food that carries divine grace. Incense creates fragrant smoke that rises like prayers. Through these tangible sensory acts, the abstract becomes intimate, and the infinite becomes approachable. Allow the imagined scent of incense and sound of bells to wash over you as you rest. Fact 23. The concept of dharma, which we've touched upon, is far more nuanced than simply duty or righteousness. Dharma represents the cosmic order, the natural law that maintains harmony in the universe. But it also represents your personal dharma, the unique path that is right for you based on your nature, your stage of life, your circumstances, and your role in society. Hindu texts recognize that what is dharma for one person might not be dharma for another. A warrior's dharma differs from a priest's dharma. A student's dharma differs from a householder's dharma. This contextual ethics acknowledges the complexity of real life, where rigid rules sometimes fail and wisdom requires discernment. Fact 24. Traditional Hindu thought organized human life into 4 stages, called ashramas, each with its own dharma and purpose. The first stage, brahmacharya, is the period of youth and education, devoted to learning from teachers and developing character. The second stage, grihastha, is the householder phase, marriage, raising children, pursuing a career, and contributing to society. The third stage, vanaprastha, traditionally began when one's hair turned grey and one's children were grown. It was a time of gradual withdrawal, of reducing material attachments and deepening spiritual practice. The fourth stage, sannyasa, was complete renunciation, leaving behind home and possessions to wander as a spiritual seeker, devoted entirely to moksha, liberation. Not everyone passes through all stages, but the framework acknowledges that different phases of life call for different priorities. Fact 25. Hindu philosophy also recognized 4 purusharthas, or aims of human life, creating a balanced vision of what makes life meaningful. There is dharma, righteous living and moral duty. There is artha, material prosperity and worldly success. Yes, Hinduism acknowledges that financial security and accomplishment matter. There is kama, pleasure and enjoyment, including sensual and aesthetic pleasures. Life should be savored, beauty appreciated. And finally, there is moksha, spiritual liberation, the ultimate goal of transcending the cycle of rebirth. These aren't arranged in a hierarchy where you must choose one over others. Rather, they're different threads that should be woven together into a complete life. a spirituality that honors both transcendence and embodiment, both renunciation and engagement. Let this balance settle into your awareness as your body grows heavier with relaxation. Fact 26. The practice of yoga, now known worldwide primarily as physical exercise, originated as a comprehensive spiritual discipline in ancient India. The word yoga comes from the Sanskrit root yuj, meaning to yoke or to unite, referring to the union of individual consciousness with cosmic consciousness. The Yoga Sutras, compiled by the sage Patanjali around 400 CE, outline an 8-limbed path. The physical postures, or asanas, that most people associate with yoga are actually just one limb, originally designed to prepare the body for meditation. The other limbs include ethical principles, breath control, sensory withdrawal, concentration, meditation, and ultimately samadhi, complete absorption in the divine, where the sense of separate self dissolves entirely. Breathe deeply. Feel your body. This too is part of the ancient path. Fact 27. Sacred sound holds tremendous importance in Hindu practice through the use of mantras, syllables, words, or phrases that are chanted or meditated upon. The most sacred of all mantras is Om, or Am, considered the primordial sound from which the universe emerged. It represents the vibration of ultimate reality itself. When you chant Om, Hindu tradition teaches that you're not just making a sound, but aligning yourself with the fundamental frequency of existence. The Mandukya Upanishad explains that Om contains within it all states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and the transcendent state beyond all three. Even in silence, Om is said to be continuously resonating throughout creation, the cosmic hum underlying all things. Let that thought carry you deeper into stillness as we continue to unfold this ancient wisdom. Settle even more deeply now. Let the gentle rhythm of these ancient truths lull you toward peace. Fact 28. The sacred rivers of India hold profound spiritual significance in Hindu tradition, with the Ganges, known as Ganga in Sanskrit, considered the holiest of all. Hindus believe that the Ganges descended from heaven to earth, her celestial waters breaking the fall through Shiva's matted hair to prevent the force from destroying the world. To bathe in the Ganges is to wash away sins and accumulated karma. To have one's ashes scattered in her waters after death is to aid the soul's journey toward liberation. Millions of pilgrims travel to cities along the Ganges each year, to Varanasi, to Haridwar, to Rishikesh, seeking purification, blessing, and connection with the divine that flows in liquid form through the landscape. Fact 29. Pilgrimage, or Tirtha Yatra, became a central practice in Hindu spirituality. A tirtha is literally a ford or crossing place, a location where the boundary between the mundane and sacred becomes thin, where heaven touches earth. These sites might be temples, rivers, mountains, or places associated with gods, sages, or sacred events. The journey itself matters as much as the destination, leaving behind ordinary life, enduring hardships of travel, opening oneself to transformation. Some pilgrimages are short, to a nearby temple. Others span years and thousands of miles, visiting the four corners of the subcontinent. Badrinath in the north, Rameshwaram in the south, Dwarka in the west, Puri in the east. Each step becomes a prayer, each mile a meditation. Imagine yourself as a pilgrim, walking dusty roads under vast skies, moving towards something sacred. 30. The concept of guru or spiritual teacher holds special reverence in Hindu tradition. The word itself means dispeller of darkness, one who brings light to ignorance. Knowledge, especially spiritual knowledge, was traditionally passed directly from teacher to student in an intimate relationship of guidance and transformation. The guru isn't merely an instructor conveying information, but a living embodiment of the teachings, one who has walked the path and can guide others through its challenges. There's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. The guru-disciple relationship, at its best, becomes a sacred bond where awakening is transmitted not just through words, but through presence, through example, through the mysterious alchemy of human connection. Fact 31. Around the 6th century BCE, Hinduism faced creative challenges from new movements emerging within Indian society. Buddhism and Jainism arose during this period, founded by teachers who questioned certain aspects of Vedic ritual and priestly authority. Rather than destroying Hinduism, these challenges invigorated it, spurring philosophical developments and reforms. Hinduism has always demonstrated a remarkable capacity to absorb, adapt, and evolve, incorporating new ideas while maintaining continuity with ancient roots. The Buddha himself was eventually incorporated into Hindu tradition as the ninth avatar of Vishnu, a profound example of Hinduism's inclusive tendency to embrace rather than exclude. Let your mind rest in this spirit of openness and adaptation as your breathing slows further. Fact 32. During the medieval period, roughly from the 7th to 17th centuries CE, a powerful devotional movement called Bhakti swept across India, fundamentally reshaping Hindu practice. Bhakti means devotion or participation, an intense, personal, emotional love for God that required no intermediaries, no complex rituals, no priestly class. Saints and poets from all backgrounds, including women and people from communities traditionally excluded from Vedic learning, composed ecstatic songs of divine love in regional languages rather than Sanskrit. They sang in the streets and fields, making spirituality accessible to everyone. This democratization of the sacred opened pathways to the divine that didn't depend on birth, education, or social status, but on the sincerity of the heart alone. Fact 33. Among the Bhakti saints, the stories of their devotion remain luminous with intensity. There was Mirabai, a 16th century Rajasthani princess who considered herself married to Krishna and composed hundreds of devotional poems to her beloved Lord, defying her royal family's expectations. There was Kabir, a 15th century weaver whose verses bridged Hindu and Islamic mysticism, challenging religious boundaries. There was Tukaram, a 17th century Maharashtrian poet who sang to Vithoba, a form of Vishnu, transforming everyday language into vessels of transcendence. These saints didn't just teach about love of God, they lived it with such fervor that their lives themselves became teachings. Their ecstasy, a kind of proof that the divine could be directly experienced. Picture their songs echoing through centuries, still sung today, carrying devotion across time. Fact 34. The practice of darshan became central to Hindu worship, the act of seeing and being seen by the divine. When devotees visit a temple or encounter a holy person, they seek darshan, which is more than simply looking. It's a reciprocal exchange of vision, a moment of connection where the boundary between seer and seen dissolves. The eyes of the deity's image are often specially consecrated, and devotees believe that when they gaze upon the divine form, they are simultaneously held in the divine gaze. This transforms seeing from a passive act into an intimate encounter, a mutual recognition. Even photographs or images of deities and gurus are treated with reverence because they facilitate darshan, that precious moment of visual communion. Fact 35. Hindu cosmology conceives of time on vast, almost incomprehensible scales. Rather than linear time moving from creation to apocalypse, Hindu tradition envisions cyclical time moving through enormous epochs called yugas. 4 yugas make up one cycle, progressing from the Satya Yuga, a golden age of truth and virtue lasting 1.728 million years, through progressively shorter and darker ages until reaching the Kali Yuga, the current age of discord and decline, lasting 432,000 years. 1,000 cycles of these 4 yugas comprise 1 day of Brahma, the creator god, 4.32 billion years. And Brahma lives for 100 years of such days and nights, after which the entire universe dissolves back into the unmanifest, rests, and is born again. Against this cosmic timescale, human concerns shrink to the size of a single breath. Yet that breath still matters within the grand pattern. Feel yourself floating in this vast ocean of time, a small wave in an endless cycle. Fact 36. This cosmology includes not just our Earth, but countless worlds arranged vertically and horizontally through space. Above our realm are the celestial planes where gods and perfected beings dwell, Below are the nether regions, not exactly hells, but underworlds with their own inhabitants. Mount Meru stands at the center, the cosmic axis around which everything revolves. The universe itself resembles a cosmic egg, containing all these layered realities. And this entire universe, vast as it is just one among infinite universes, each with its own Brahma, each passing through its own cycles of creation and dissolution. The vision is both humbling and exhilarating. We are infinitesimally small, yet participants in something magnificent beyond measure. Rest now in the comfort of being part of something so ancient, so vast, so enduring. Your breathing is slow and steady now. Let these truths wash over you like moonlight on still water. Fact 37. The sacred texts known as the Puranas emerged between the 3rd and 10th centuries CE, creating a vast library of mythology, history, and spiritual instruction. There are 18 major Puranas and many minor ones, each containing hundreds of thousands of verses. Unlike the austere philosophy of the Upanishads or the ritual focus of the Vedas, the Puranas communicate through story, tales of gods and demons, kings and sages, cosmic battles, and divine play. They made the abstract teachings of Hinduism concrete and accessible, transforming philosophical concepts into vivid narratives that could be shared around evening fires, recited in temples, and passed from grandparent to grandchild. Through these stories, millions learned about dharma, karma, and devotion without needing to master Sanskrit or study with scholars. One of the most beloved concepts in Hindu devotion is Krishna's Lila, divine play, or sport. Lila represents the idea that the universe itself is God's playful creative expression, not born from necessity or effort, but from pure joy and spontaneity. Krishna, especially in his childhood and youth, embodies this principle perfectly. The stories tell of young Krishna stealing butter, dancing with the gopis, the cowherd women of Vrindavan, playing his flute beneath the full moon, charming all of creation with his beauty and mischief. These aren't trivial stories about a naughty child, but profound teachings, that the divine delights in creation, that life can be approached with joy rather than grim seriousness, that love and play are themselves paths to transcendence. Let yourself smile inwardly at this vision of a playful universe as you sink deeper into rest. The festival calendar of Hinduism pulses with celebrations throughout the year, marking seasonal changes, lunar phases, and sacred events. Diwali, the festival of lights, celebrates the victory of light over darkness, knowledge over ignorance, typically commemorating Rama's return from exile. Millions of oil lamps flicker in windows and doorways. Families gather. Fireworks illuminate the night sky. Holi, the festival of colors, marks spring's arrival with exuberant play. People throw colored powders at each other. Social hierarchies dissolve in rainbow clouds, and the world becomes a canvas of joy. Navaratri honors the goddess over 9 nights of fasting, prayer, and dance. These festivals aren't mere holidays, but rhythms that connect communities to sacred time, to each other, and to the eternal stories that give meaning to existence. Fact 40. The practice of prana and breath control, called pranayama, developed as a sophisticated science within yoga. Prana means more than just breath. It's the vital life force that animates all living things, the energy that flows through everything. By consciously regulating the breath, practitioners believed they could control this subtle energy, purifying the body's energy channels, called nadis, and awakening dormant spiritual potential. Different breathing techniques produce different effects. Some energize, some calm, some prepare the mind for meditation. The breath becomes a bridge between body and mind, between the voluntary and involuntary, between the mundane and the sacred. With each inhale, you draw in life itself. With each exhale, you release what no longer serves. Breathe with awareness now, feeling that ancient current of prana moving through you. Fact 41. The concept of the chakras emerged from tantric traditions, describing subtle energy centers arranged along the spine. The word chakra means wheel or disc, and these centers are envisioned as spinning vortexes of energy, each associated with specific qualities, colors, and levels of consciousness. At the base of the spine lies the Muladhara, the root chakra, representing groundedness and survival. At the crown of the head sits the Sahasrara, the thousand-petaled lotus, representing pure consciousness and spiritual liberation. Between them are 5 other major chakras, each governing different dimensions of human experience. Spiritual practice aims to awaken the dormant Kundalini energy, visualized as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine, and guide it upward through each chakra until it reaches the crown, bringing enlightenment. Fact 42. Tantra, which developed between the 5th and 9th centuries CE, represents a radical departure from some traditional Hindu paths. While orthodox approaches often emphasized renunciation of worldly experience, Tantra taught that liberation could be found through experience itself, that the body, sexuality, sensory pleasure, and material reality weren't obstacles to transcendence, but potential vehicles for it. Tantric practitioners worked with mantras, yantras, geometric diagrams representing cosmic forces, and elaborate rituals designed to awaken spiritual energy. The approach was esoteric, often secretive, passed from guru to initiated student. It acknowledged the power of desire and taught practitioners to transform rather than suppress it, channeling powerful energies toward awakening rather than bondage. Let go of any tension remaining in your body as we continue through this landscape of practices and philosophies. Fact 43. The caste system, though not originally part of the earliest Vedic religion, became deeply entrenched in Hindu society over centuries. It began perhaps as a simple division of labor, the Brahmins, or priests and scholars, the Kshatriyas, or warriors and rulers, the Vaishyas, or merchants and farmers, and the Shudras, or laborers and servants. Below even these were the Dalits, once called untouchables, excluded from the caste system entirely. What may have started as functional categories hardened into hereditary hierarchy, birth determining destiny, upper castes monopolizing education and religious authority. This system caused tremendous suffering and injustice, contradicting Hinduism's own highest teachings about the unity of all beings and the divine spark within every soul. Reform movements have challenged caste discrimination for centuries, with figures like Gandhi and Ambedkar leading modern efforts to dismantle this oppressive structure. Fact 44. In 1893, a young monk named Swami Vivekananda travelled from India to Chicago to address the Parliament of the world's religions, becoming the first Hindu teacher to bring Vedanta philosophy to the Western world in a systematic way. His speech began simply, "Sisters and Brothers of America," and those words alone received a standing ovation, for he addressed the audience as equals, as family. Vivekananda spoke of Hinduism's inclusivity, its recognition of multiple paths to truth, its ancient wisdom that all religions ultimately lead to the same summit. His leonine presence and eloquent teachings planted seeds that would eventually blossom into yoga studios, meditation centers, and interfaith dialogue throughout the West. He showed that Hinduism had something to offer not just India, but all humanity. Picture him standing there, bridging worlds, his voice carrying ancient truths into a new era. Fact 45. The 20th century brought tremendous changes and challenges to Hindu practice and identity. Colonial rule ended with Indian independence in 1947, but partition created the separate nation of Pakistan, leading to devastating violence between Hindu and Muslim communities. The modern Indian state declared itself secular, navigating the complex relationship between religious tradition and contemporary governance. Hindu nationalism emerged as a political force, sometimes promoting cultural pride, sometimes fostering dangerous sectarianism. Meanwhile, Hindu teachers continued spreading eastward and westward. Figures like Paramahansa Yogananda, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and countless others brought meditation, yoga, and Vedantic philosophy to global audiences. Hinduism entered the modern age, carrying its ancient heritage while adapting to unprecedented change. Rest deeply now, feeling the weight of this long history, this river of wisdom flowing from antiquity into the present moment. where you lie breathing, listening, part of the eternal story. You are drifting now, floating on the current of this ancient wisdom. Let your body be heavy, your mind be light. Fact 46. The Bhagavad Gita, which we encountered earlier in our journey, has become perhaps the most widely read Hindu scripture in the modern world. Mahatma Gandhi called it his spiritual dictionary and turned to it throughout his life for guidance. Its 18 chapters contain a complete spiritual philosophy, addressing the tension between action and renunciation, between duty and desire, between the individual soul and cosmic consciousness. What makes the Gita so enduring is its practicality. It doesn't demand that you retreat to a cave or renounce the world, but shows how to live spiritually while fully engaged in life's responsibilities. Krishna's teaching to Arjuna on that ancient battlefield speaks to every person facing difficult choices, moral complexity, and the search for meaning in the midst of action. Fact 47. The sacred syllable Om, which we've touched upon, is often written as 3 letters in Sanskrit, Aum, and this threefold nature holds layers of meaning. The A represents creation, Brahma, the waking state, and the beginning. The U represents preservation, Vishnu, the dream state, and continuity. The M represents dissolution, Shiva, deep sleep, and endings. Together, they encompass all of existence, all states of consciousness, all phases of the cosmic cycle. But there is also a 4th element, the silence that follows the sound, representing Turiya, the transcendent consciousness beyond all 3 states, the ultimate reality that cannot be spoken but only experienced. When you chant Om, you're not just making a sound, but tracing the entire arc of existence from manifestation back to the source. Allow the resonance of that sacred sound to hum silently within you as you rest. Fact 48. Hindu wedding ceremonies are rich with symbolism, transforming marriage from a social contract into a sacred covenant. The couple circles a sacred fire, Agni, 7 times, taking 7 vows with each circumambulation. Vows of nourishment, strength, prosperity, happiness, progeny, harmony through seasons, and lifelong friendship. The fire serves as divine witness, carrying their promises to the gods. The groom places sindoor, vermilion powder, in the parting of the bride's hair, marking her as married. They take 7 steps together, the saptapadi, symbolizing their journey through life as partners. These rituals recognize marriage as a sacrament, one of the most important samskaras or life cycle ceremonies, joining not just 2 individuals but 2 families, 2 lineages, 2 souls on the path of dharma. The tilak or bindi, the mark often worn on the forehead, carries both spiritual and cultural significance. The forehead is considered the location of the Ajna chakra, the 3rd eye, the seat of intuition and inner wisdom. Applying a mark there serves as a reminder to keep the inner eye open, to maintain spiritual awareness even while moving through daily life. Different marks indicate different things. Followers of Vishnu often wear a U-shaped mark. Followers of Shiva wear horizontal lines, and the simple red dot is worn widely by married women as a sign of auspiciousness. What might appear as mere decoration to outsiders is actually a sacred gesture, a way of carrying temple consciousness into every moment, a visible sign of an invisible commitment. Fact 50. The practice of ahimsa, non-violence or non-harming, became a cornerstone of Hindu ethics, though its interpretation has varied. At its most expansive, ahimsa means avoiding harm to any living being, in thought, word, and deed. This principle led many Hindus to adopt vegetarianism, though dietary practices vary widely by region, community, and personal choice. Mahatma Gandhi elevated ahimsa to a political strategy, demonstrating that nonviolent resistance could topple empires. But ahimsa goes deeper than refraining from physical violence. It means cultivating compassion, speaking without cruelty, thinking without hatred. It recognizes that violence begins in the mind and heart long before it manifests in action, and that true non-violence requires transformation at the deepest levels of consciousness. Feel any remaining tension dissolve as you embrace this principle of gentleness toward yourself and all beings. Fact 51. The sacred fig tree, known as the Bodhi tree or peepal tree, holds special reverence in Hindu tradition. The Bhagavad Gita describes an eternal Ashvatha tree with roots above and branches below, symbolizing the inverted tree of existence, rooted in the divine, branching down into material manifestation. Actual people trees are considered dwelling places of deities, particularly Vishnu and Lakshmi. People circumambulate them, water their roots, tie sacred threads around their trunks, and meditate beneath their shade. These trees can live for thousands of years, their roots intertwining with temples and villages, silent witnesses to generations of prayer and devotion. They remind us that the sacred isn't separate from nature, but woven throughout it, that divinity dwells in leaf and branch as surely as in scripture and stone. Fact 52. The concept of seva, or selfless service, represents one of the most practical expressions of Hindu spirituality. Seva means serving others without expectation of reward or recognition, seeing the divine in every person you help. It might mean feeding the hungry, caring for the sick, teaching children, cleaning a temple, or simply offering kindness to a stranger. Many temples operate langar, free community kitchens, where anyone regardless of background can receive a meal. The person serving and the person being served are both engaged in a sacred exchange. One offers service, the other offers the opportunity to serve. Through seva, the distinction between self and other begins to blur. You discover that serving the divine in another person is ultimately serving your own deepest self. Hindu philosophy developed 6 orthodox schools of thought, called darshanas, each offering a different lens through which to view reality. There's Nyaya, which emphasizes logic and epistemology, how we know what we know. There's Vaisheshika, which analyzes the constituents of reality down to atoms and categories. There's Samkhya, which distinguishes between consciousness and matter, spirit and nature. There's Yoga, which we've explored, offering practical techniques for spiritual realization. There's Mimamsa, which focuses on proper interpretation and performance of Vedic rituals. And there's Vedanta, which we've touched upon, exploring the nature of ultimate reality and the self. These weren't competing religions, but complementary perspectives, different tools for different aspects of understanding, all ultimately pointing toward the same truth. Let your mind rest in the spaciousness of this philosophical richness, so many pathways up the mountain. Fact 54. In recent decades, Hindu diaspora communities have carried their traditions around the globe, building temples in London and Toronto, Singapore and Sydney, Atlanta and Amsterdam. These communities face unique challenges: how to maintain traditions in new contexts, how to pass them to children growing up in different cultures, how to translate Sanskrit concepts into English and other languages, how to adapt practices designed for Indian villages to modern urban life. Yet these challenges have also brought renewal and creativity. Diaspora Hindus often develop a more conscious, articulate understanding of their tradition, forced to explain and examine practices that might have been taken for granted at home. Hinduism continues to demonstrate its remarkable adaptability, taking root in new soil while maintaining connection to ancient sources. Feel yourself settling completely now, your journey through these 100 facts more than half complete, wisdom accumulating like layers of soft blankets, drawing you toward deep and peaceful rest. You are deep in relaxation now, your breath barely a whisper. Let these truths carry you gently forward. Fact 55. The practice of fasting, or upavasa, serves as a powerful tool for spiritual discipline in Hindu tradition. The word upavasa literally means dwelling near the divine, moving closer through self-restraint. Fasts take many forms. Some abstain from all food, some from certain foods, some eat only once a day, some only fruits and milk. Many Hindus fast on particular days sacred to specific deities. Mondays for Shiva, Thursdays for Vishnu, Fridays for the goddess. These aren't punishments but offerings, ways of demonstrating devotion through voluntary sacrifice. Fasting quiets the constant demands of the body, creating space for prayer and meditation. It cultivates willpower and reminds practitioners that they are more than their hungers, the that the spirit can prevail over physical craving. In the emptiness of an unfed belly, some find a strange fullness of the soul. Fact 56. Sacred ash, called vibhuti or bhashma, holds special significance, particularly among Shiva devotees. This fine grey ash, traditionally prepared from cow dung burnt in sacred fires, is applied in horizontal lines across the forehead and sometimes on other parts of the body. It carries profound symbolism. Ash is what remains after fire has consumed everything combustible, representing the impermanence of all material existence. Kings and beggars, riches and rags, beauty and ugliness, all eventually become ash. Wearing it is a constant reminder of mortality and the futility of ego. Yet paradoxically, it's also a symbol of immortality, for what cannot be burned, the eternal soul, is represented by what remains after burning. In this simple grey powder lies a complete philosophy of detachment and transcendence. Imagine the coolness of ash on your forehead, a gentle reminder of deeper truths. Fact 57. The coconut has become one of Hinduism's most ubiquitous ritual objects, offered at virtually every ceremony and temple visit. Breaking a coconut before beginning an endeavor is considered auspicious. The hard shell represents the ego, and breaking it symbolizes surrendering that ego to the divine. The 3 dark spots on the coconut resemble eyes and a mouth, representing the human face. Inside the hard shell is sweet water and white flesh, just as inside the hard shell of ego lies the sweetness of the true self. Once broken and offered, the coconut is usually returned as prasad, blessed food, the gift cycling back to the giver transformed. Something as simple as a fruit becomes a vehicle for profound spiritual metaphor, teaching that nothing in creation is merely mundane. Everything can become sacred through intention and awareness. Fact 58. Music and chanting have always been inseparable from Hindu worship. The Sama Veda, one of the 4 Vedas, consists entirely of hymns meant to be sung. Classical Indian music itself evolved within temple contexts, with ragas, melodic frameworks, considered not just artistic structures, but living beings with the power to invoke specific moods and even specific deities. Bhajans and kirtans, devotional songs, transform worship into participatory celebration, where the boundary between performer and audience dissolves. Everyone sings, claps, sometimes dances, the repetitive melodies and sacred names inducing states of joyful absorption. Music becomes prayer, rhythm becomes meditation, and sound itself becomes a pathway to the divine. The universe, after all, is said to have begun with sound, with Om, and returns to silence only to sound again. Let the memory of sacred music echo softly in your mind as you drift deeper. Fact 59. The lotus flower holds extraordinary symbolic importance throughout Hindu iconography. Deities are often depicted seated or standing upon lotus blossoms. Lakshmi emerges from a lotus. Brahma is born from a lotus growing from Vishnu's navel. Saraswati holds a lotus. The symbolism is rich. The lotus grows in muddy water, yet remains unstained, its petals pure and beautiful. Similarly, the spiritual aspirant lives in the world, surrounded by suffering and imperfection, yet remains untouched by it, maintaining inner purity. The lotus also unfolds its petals gradually, just as consciousness unfolds gradually toward enlightenment. Its roots in mud, its stem in water, its flower in air, the lotus spans all elements, unifying earth, water, and sky. Beauty arising from darkness, purity emerging from impurity, the lotus teaches that nothing is wasted, that even mud has purpose. 60. Hindu cosmology describes 14 lokas or planes of existence, 7 higher and 7 lower, stacked like stories in an infinite building. The highest is Satya Loka, the realm of ultimate truth where Brahma resides. Below that are realms of increasingly dense manifestation, realms of sages, of celestial beings, of gods. Our earth, called Bhuloka, sits in the middle. Below are the nether regions. Not exactly hells, for they're not eternal, but realms where beings work out negative karma before rebirth. The lowest is Patala, dwelling place of Nagas, serpent beings. Souls cycle through these realms based on karma, rising and falling through worlds within worlds. This vertical geography recognizes that reality has layers. that existence contains multitudes of experience beyond what we perceive with ordinary senses. Fact 61. The practice of japa, repetitive recitation of a mantra, serves as one of the most accessible forms of meditation. Practitioners often use a mala, a string of 108 beads, moving one bead with each repetition, the tactile action helping maintain focus. The number 108 is considered sacred for many reasons. There are 108 Upanishads, 108 names of deities, 108 sacred sites. Some say the distance from Earth to Sun is 108 times the Sun's diameter, or that the human body has 108 energy lines converging to form the heart chakra. Whether these numerological correspondences are literal truth or not, they reflect Hinduism's love of sacred geometry and meaningful pattern. Through japa, the mind that usually jumps like a monkey from branch to branch finds a vine to grip, the repetition gradually stilling the chaos of thought. Feel your own mind growing quieter, more still, as thoughts settle like dust after wind. The principle of aparigraha, non-possessiveness or non-grasping, teaches that suffering often arises not from what we lack, but from our clinging to what we have. Hindu wisdom recognizes that possessions possess the possessor, that accumulation becomes burden, that the hand clenched around an object cannot receive anything new. This doesn't necessarily mean rejecting all material goods, but holding them lightly, understanding their impermanence, avoiding the delusion that ownership brings security or happiness. Monks and renunciants take this principle to its extreme, owning perhaps only a bowl and a robe. But householders too can practice aparigraha, using what they need without hoarding, giving generously, remembering that all possessions are temporary loans from the universe, returning eventually to the great stream of circulation from which they came. Let go of everything now, even these words, as you float in the space between waking and sleep, held safely in the arms of ancient wisdom that has cradled billions of souls across thousands of years. You are barely awake now, hovering in that liminal space where consciousness and dreams meet. Let these final truths be like stars in a darkening sky. Fact 63. The festival of Kumbh Mela represents the largest peaceful gathering of humans on Earth, occurring every 12 years at 4 different sacred river sites in India. During the most auspicious alignments, over 100 million pilgrims converge to bathe in holy waters. The Ganges at Haridwar, the confluence of Ganges and Yamuna at Prayagraj, the Godavari at Nashik, the Shipra at Ujjain. The origins trace back to ancient mythology. Gods and demons once churned the cosmic ocean seeking the nectar of immortality, and during the struggle, drops of this precious amrita fell at these 4 locations. For weeks, the riverbanks transform into temporary cities of tents and ashrams filled with sadhus, holy men smeared with ash, their bodies decorated, their hair matted into long dreadlocks. Naked Naga sadhus plunge into the waters first, followed by waves of ordinary pilgrims seeking purification and blessing. The scale is almost incomprehensible, an entire ocean of humanity flowing toward grace. Fact 64. The mudras, or sacred hand gestures, form a sophisticated language of symbolic meaning in Hindu ritual and classical dance. Each positioning of fingers and palms represents specific energies, qualities, or deities. The Anjali mudra, palms pressed together at the heart, expresses reverence and the unity of opposites. The Abhaya mudra, palm facing forward, conveys fearlessness and protection. Do not fear, it says silently. The Chin mudra, thumb and index finger touching, represents the union of individual and cosmic consciousness. Deities in statues and paintings display characteristic mudras. Vishnu's hands speak of preservation and blessing. Shiva's hands speak of destruction and grace. These gestures aren't merely decorative, but are understood to channel subtle energies, the hands becoming instruments of spiritual power, each finger connected to elements and energies coursing through creation. Your own hands rest quietly now, perhaps curled softly, holding their own silent wisdom. Fact 65. The Ayurveda, the traditional system of Hindu medicine, views health as a state of balance between body, mind, and spirit. Developed over thousands of years, Ayurveda recognizes three fundamental energies or doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, each composed of different elements and governing different bodily functions. Vata, composed of air and space, governs movement and communication. Pitta, composed of fire and water, governs transformation and metabolism. Kapha, composed of earth and water, governs structure and lubrication. Health emerges when these three are in harmony. Disease arises from imbalance. Treatment addresses the whole person, not just symptoms, using herbs, diet, massage, meditation, and lifestyle adjustments. The physician isn't merely treating a body, but supporting a soul's journey through embodied existence, recognizing that physical health and spiritual well-being are inseparable threads in the fabric of life. Fact 66. The concept of Maya, often translated as illusion, carries subtlety that simple translation can miss. Maya doesn't mean the world is unreal or non-existent, like a hallucination to be dismissed. Rather, Maya refers to the tendency to mistake the temporary for the permanent, the part for the whole, the form for the essence. We see separate objects and miss the underlying unity. We see birth and death and miss the eternal soul. We see multiplicity and miss the one reality expressing itself in infinite forms. Maya is the cosmic magic show, the creative power that makes the one appear as many, the eternal appear as temporal. To see through Maya isn't to reject the world, but to see it truly, to recognize that the wave and ocean are not separate, that every form is a temporary expression of formless consciousness dancing with itself. Let this understanding wash through you, distinctions softening, boundaries dissolving. Fact 67. The sacred thread ceremony, called Upanayana, marks a major transition in a young person's life, traditionally for boys of the three upper castes beginning their education. A sacred thread is placed over the left shoulder and across the chest, consisting of three strands representing various triads, body, speech and mind, past, present and future, or the three debts owed to sages, ancestors and gods. This ceremony represents a second birth, a spiritual awakening, and the beginning of formal study of the Vedas. Though historically restricted by caste and gender, reformers have argued for its universal application, seeing it as a beautiful acknowledgement that education and spiritual initiation transform a person, that learning is itself a sacred undertaking. The thread, worn continuously, serves as a constant reminder of one's commitment to learning, truth, and dharma. Fact 68. Vastu Shastra, the traditional Hindu system of architecture and spatial arrangement, understands buildings as living organisms that channel cosmic energies. Like feng shui in China, Vastu prescribes auspicious directions, proportions, and placements for different rooms and functions. The northeast is considered most sacred, ideal for prayer rooms. The kitchen belongs in the southeast, the element of fire. Bedrooms face south or west. These aren't arbitrary rules, but reflect an understanding that we're constantly in relationship with subtle energies flowing through space, and that our environments profoundly affect our consciousness. Temples especially follow Vastu principles meticulously, their every dimension calculated according to sacred geometry, creating structures that don't just house worship, but actively facilitate it. Spaces designed to lift awareness toward the divine. Feel the space around you now, holding you, supporting your rest, its own silent presence. The practice of pradakshina, circumambulation, involves walking clockwise around a sacred object, keeping it to your right. Devotees circle temples, sacred trees, deities, gurus, even sacred mountains like Mount Kailash, believed to be Shiva's abode. This simple act carries layered meaning. It shows respect, with the sacred always positioned near the heart. It mimics cosmic movements, planets orbiting the sun, electrons circling nuclei, existence itself spiraling around the divine center. The repetitive walking becomes meditation, each circuit deepening focus, the body's movement anchoring the wandering mind. Some pilgrims circumambulate for hours, days, even weeks, their footsteps wearing paths in stone, joining with countless footsteps before them in an endless procession of devotion stretching back through centuries. Fact 70. Hindu philosophy makes crucial distinctions between different types of knowledge. Aparavidya is lower knowledge, knowledge of the world, of science, arts, rituals, scriptures, all valuable but ultimately limited to phenomenal reality. Paravidya is higher knowledge, direct realization of Brahman, experiential understanding of ultimate truth beyond words and concepts. You can memorize every scripture, master every ritual, understand every philosophical system, and still not possess Paravidya. That deeper knowing comes not through accumulation, but through revelation, not through effort, but through grace, not through the mind, but through transformation of consciousness itself. Both types of knowledge have their place, but Hindu wisdom has always maintained that knowing about God and knowing God are entirely different things. The finger pointing at the moon must never be confused with the moon itself. Rest now in the vast spaciousness of not knowing. Where true knowing sometimes quietly appears, a gift arriving in the darkness behind your closed eyes. You are so deeply relaxed now, consciousness like a candle flame flickering softly in the gentle dark. These last truths will carry you all the way home to sleep. Fact 71. The concept of the three gunas describes the fundamental qualities that compose all of material nature and influence human consciousness. Sattva represents purity, harmony, light, wisdom, and clarity, the quality that uplifts and illuminates. Rajas represents passion, activity, desire, restlessness, and energy, the quality that drives action and change. Tamas represents darkness, inertia, ignorance, and heaviness, the quality that obscures and resists. Nothing in the material world is purely one guna. Everything contains all three in different proportions, constantly shifting. A sattvic meal of fresh fruits and vegetables affects consciousness differently than a rajasic meal of spicy, stimulating foods, or a tamasic meal of old, overcooked food. Even thoughts and emotions carry these qualities. Spiritual practice aims to increase sattva while recognizing that all three gunas have their purpose in the dance of creation, like the three primary colors from which all other hues emerge. Fact 72. The tradition of sannyasa, renunciation of worldly life, represents one of Hinduism's most radical possibilities. A sannyasi performs their own funeral rites, declaring themselves dead to their former identity, family name, social position, and possessions. They wander wearing only ochre robes, owning nothing, depending on alms, dedicated entirely to spiritual realization. Some live in forests or caves, some wander perpetually from place to place, some settle in ashrams to teach. They represent the ultimate freedom, from fear, from desire, from the endless cycle of getting and keeping. Not everyone is called to this path, and Hindu tradition has always honored the householder's life as equally valid. But the existence of sannyasis serves as a living reminder that another way is possible, that the pursuit of liberation can become one's entire life, that some souls hunger for truth more than comfort, for freedom more than security. Feel yourself unburdened now, released from every weight and worry, floating free. Fact 73. The Natya Shastra, an ancient treatise on performing arts composed around the 2nd century BCE, elevated dance and drama to sacred status. It describes Bharatanatyam and other classical dance forms not as mere entertainment, but as yoga in motion, paths to divine experience for both performer and audience. Every gesture, every facial expression, every step carries meaning, tells stories, invokes emotions called rasas: love, humor, compassion, wonder, fear, disgust, anger, courage, and peace. The dancer becomes a vessel for the divine. The stage becomes a temple, the performance becomes worship. When dancers depict Krishna or Shiva, they don't just represent these deities, but attempt to embody their essence, inviting the god to manifest through carefully trained flesh and bone. Art and spirituality merge seamlessly, beauty becomes devotion, and aesthetics opens a doorway to transcendence. Fact 74. The relationship between Hindu philosophy and mathematics has been profound and reciprocal. Ancient Indian mathematicians, working within Hindu intellectual frameworks, made revolutionary contributions. The decimal system, the concept of zero as both placeholder and number, negative numbers, trigonometry, infinite series, and early calculus. The very notion of zero emerged partly from meditations on shunyata, emptiness, the pregnant void from which all manifestation emerges. Mathematical infinity resonated with concepts of the infinite divine. The precision and elegance of mathematics reflected the cosmic order, the mathematical patterns woven into creation's fabric. Temples were built according to complex mathematical ratios. Astronomical calculations determined auspicious times for rituals. The abstract and the sacred, the quantitative and the qualitative, weren't separate domains, but different languages describing the same underlying reality. The practice of treating guests as manifestations of God, captured in the phrase Atithi Devo Bhava, the guest is God, elevated hospitality to a spiritual principle. An unexpected visitor isn't an inconvenience, but an opportunity for service, perhaps even a deity in disguise testing your virtue, as many myths describe. Traditional Hindu households would feed guests before family members ate, offer the best bed, provide whatever was needed without expectation of repayment. This practice cultivates generosity, breaks down the barrier between mine and yours, and trains the heart to see the sacred in every encounter. When you serve food to a stranger with reverence, when you offer shelter to a traveler with joy, you're not just being kind, you're participating in ancient rhythms of dharma, recognizing that we're all travelers on the same journey, all guests in this temporary world, all deserving of grace. Imagine being held in such hospitality now, completely welcomed, perfectly safe. Fact 76. The concept of loka sangraha, working for the welfare of the world, balances individual spiritual pursuit with collective responsibility. While some paths emphasize personal liberation, loka sangraha reminds practitioners that enlightenment shouldn't lead to indifference toward others' suffering. The awakened person doesn't withdraw from the world, but engages with it more compassionately, working to reduce suffering and increase well-being for all beings. Krishna teaches this principle in the Bhagavad Gita. Even after achieving wisdom, one should continue acting for the benefit of others, setting an example, maintaining the world's order. This prevents spirituality from becoming selfish escapism and roots transcendence in compassionate engagement. You seek your own liberation, not just for yourself, but to become more capable of serving, your freedom radiating outward like light from a lamp. Fact 77. The tradition recognizes 4 debts, or rinas, that every person owes. The debt to the gods for the gift of life and sustenance, repaid through worship and rituals. The debt to the sages and teachers who preserved wisdom, repaid through study and passing knowledge forward. The debt to ancestors whose sacrifices enabled your existence, repaid through honoring them and continuing the lineage. And the debt to all beings who support your life, repaid through compassion and service. These debts aren't burdens, but acknowledgements of interconnection, recognitions that no one exists in isolation. Your very existence is woven from countless gifts, seen and unseen. To live well means to recognize this web of indebtedness and reciprocate generously, keeping the great cycle of giving and receiving flowing, understanding that in the deepest sense, giver and receiver are not separate but one. Fact 78. As Hindu traditions encountered modernity, reform movements emerged to address social ills while preserving spiritual essence. Raja Ram Mohan Roy in the 19th century campaigned against sati, the practice of widow burning, and advocated for women's education. Swami Dayananda Saraswati founded the Arya Samaj, emphasizing Vedic authority while rejecting caste discrimination and idol worship. Sri Ramakrishna and his disciple Vivekananda taught that all religions lead to the same truth. Mahatma Gandhi made Hindu principles of ahimsa and satyagraha, truth force, into tools for social and political transformation. These reformers demonstrated that tradition need not mean rigidity, that ancient wisdom can speak to contemporary challenges, that faithfulness to dharma sometimes means challenging practices that contradict dharma's deepest principles. A living tradition grows and adapts while remaining rooted in eternal truths. Breathe softly now, nearly at the journey's end, wisdom settling into your depths like sediment drifting down through still water, coming finally to rest on the bottom of consciousness, where dreams begin. Number 100. Facts about Hinduism to fall asleep to. Minutes 90-100. Almost there now. Your journey through these ancient truths is nearly complete. Let these final facts dissolve into the peaceful darkness that embraces you. Fact 79. The sacred city of Varanasi, also known as Kashi or Benares, is considered the spiritual heart of Hinduism, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on earth. For thousands of years, pilgrims have come to its ghats, the stone steps descending to the Ganges, to bathe, to worship, to cremate their dead. Hindu belief holds that to die in Varanasi is to achieve instant moksha, liberation from the cycle of rebirth. The city belongs to Shiva, who is said to whisper the Taraka mantra, the fairy mantra, into the ear of every dying soul, guiding them across the river of death to freedom. At dawn, the river reflects golden light as priests perform ceremonies with fire and flowers. At dusk, smoke from cremation pyres mingles with incense and prayers. Life and death, sacred and mundane, ancient and eternal, all converge on these worn stones beside the flowing water, where the boundary between worlds grows thin. Fact 80. The relationship between guru and disciple, which we've touched upon, involves a transmission that transcends mere instruction. This is called Shaktipat, the descent of spiritual energy, grace flowing from one who has realized truth to one who sincerely seeks it. Sometimes this happens through a touch, a glance, a word, or simply through presence. The guru doesn't give the student something they lack, but awakens what already sleeps within them, like one candle lighting another. The first flame loses nothing, while the second gains everything. Authentic discipleship requires readiness, humility, and surrender of ego. The student must become empty to be filled, must unlearn to learn, must die to the false self to discover the true self. When the connection is genuine, transformation happens not through effort, but through a mysterious alchemy of relationship. Two hearts are tuned to the same infinite frequency. Feel yourself open and receptive now, ready to receive whatever wisdom the silence offers. The tradition of sacred geography maps the Indian subcontinent as itself a divine body, with particular locations corresponding to energy centers and divine presences. The 7 sacred rivers, Ganges, Yamuna, Godavari, Saraswati, Narmada, Sindhu, and Kaveri, are understood as goddesses flowing through the land. The 12 Jyotirlingas, naturally occurring or self-manifested representations of Shiva, are scattered from the Himalayas to the southern tip. The 51 Shakti Pithas mark places where parts of the goddess Sati's body fell when Shiva carried her in grief. To live in India, for traditional Hindus, means to dwell within a sacred landscape, where every mountain, river, forest, and temple connects to divine stories and energies. Geography becomes theology, the earth itself a scripture written in stone and water, teaching that spirit doesn't dwell apart from matter, but permeates it, hallows it, makes it holy. Fact 82. The concept of the avatar we explored earlier extends beyond the 10 traditional incarnations of Vishnu. Hindu thought recognizes that divinity can manifest in countless forms appropriate to time, place, and need. Some traditions consider great teachers and saints to be partial avatars or divine incarnations. The flexibility of this concept reflects Hinduism's understanding that God isn't confined to a single revelation in history, but continuously reveals itself in ways suited to each age. The avatar doctrine also suggests something radical about embodiment, that flesh can contain divinity, that the distance between human and divine isn't absolute, that spiritual evolution can culminate in complete union with the source. Every soul is potentially a vehicle for divine expression. The avatars simply manifest this possibility most fully, showing what consciousness can become when perfectly aligned with ultimate reality. The festival of Shivaratri, the great night of Shiva, invites devotees to stay awake through the darkest night of the lunar month, keeping vigil with the god who never sleeps. Traditionally, worshippers fast, chant, meditate, and perform rituals throughout the night, particularly offering bilva leaves to Shiva lingams while chanting mantras. This night represents the marriage of Shiva and Parvati, the union of consciousness and energy, transcendence and immanence. It's also said to be the night when Shiva performed the cosmic dance of creation. By staying awake, devotees align themselves with Shiva's wakeful consciousness, pushing past the body's demands, using darkness itself as a medium for encountering light. When dawn finally breaks after that long night of devotion, something has shifted. The barrier between inner and outer, human and divine, has grown more permeable, worn thin by hours of focused intention. Let yourself drift now toward your own kind of vigil, the sacred rest where consciousness releases its grip and dreams arrive like messengers from the deep. Fact A4. The Hindu understanding of time includes the concept of Mahapralaya, the Great Dissolution, where not just one universe, but all universes dissolve back into the unmanifest. After Brahma's 100-year life, 311 trillion human years, everything returns to primordial potentiality, resting in formless consciousness before the next cycle of creation begins. This isn't annihilation, but reabsorption, like breath drawn back into lungs before being released again. Nothing is lost. Everything is conserved as seed potential waiting to sprout anew. This vast cosmic rhythm, manifestation and dissolution, expansion and contraction, the universe breathing in and out across inconceivable spans of time, provides ultimate perspective. Against such a scale, all human concerns shrink to the size of a single heartbeat. Yet that heartbeat still matters, still participates in the cosmic rhythm, still has its place in the grand symphony. Fact 85. The practice of satsang, gathering in the company of truth, or in the presence of those who embody truth, is considered one of the most powerful spiritual practices. Simply being near awakened consciousness, listening to wisdom shared, singing devotional songs together, sitting in meditation with others, these create a field of elevated awareness that lifts all participants. The Sanskrit saying goes, Satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatvam. From good company comes non-attachment. From non-attachment comes freedom from delusion. We are influenced by those around us more than we realize. Consciousness is contagious, for better or worse. Choosing to spend time in uplifting company, surrounding yourself with those who aspire to truth, creates conditions where transformation becomes not just possible, but natural, inevitable, like a stone rolled into a river, gradually becoming smooth. Fact 86. Hindu tradition recognizes that different individuals require different practices based on their inherent nature, or svabhava. There's no single prescription for everyone. Some souls are naturally devotional, finding fulfillment in bhakti's emotional surrender. Some are naturally intellectual, requiring jnana's rigorous inquiry. Some are naturally active, needing karma yoga's engaged service. Some are naturally contemplative, suited to Raja Yoga's meditative discipline. Rather than forcing everyone onto the same path, Hindu wisdom offers multiple doorways into the same temple, multiple paths up the same mountain. This respect for individual differences, this recognition that divine truth is too vast to be approached in only one way, creates a spirituality of remarkable inclusiveness, not despite its diversity, but because of it. Your own path is uniquely yours, unfolding in its own perfect timing, leading you home. And so we arrive at our final teaching, and perhaps the most important. The journey itself is the destination. Hindu philosophy speaks of the pathless path, the seeking that is itself finding, the practice that is simultaneously the goal. You don't practice to achieve some future enlightenment. You practice because the practice itself is enlightened living. You don't meditate to eventually reach peace. Meditation is peace, here and now, in this very breath. The eternal you seek isn't elsewhere, elsewhen. It's the very consciousness reading these words, hearing these sounds, the aware presence that has been constant throughout your entire life, witnessing everything yet touched by nothing. Moksha, liberation, isn't a distant prize to be won, but a present reality to be recognized, like suddenly remembering you've been holding the key in your hand all along. All the facts we've explored, the gods and goddesses, the practices and philosophies, the rituals and realizations, all point back to this. You are already what you seek. The wave was never separate from the ocean. The journey of 4,000 years we've traveled tonight circles back to this moment, this breath, this awareness, peacefully observing the rise and fall of your chest, the settling of thoughts like birds returning to their nests at nightfall. Rest now, completely. You've traveled far, through millennia and mysteries, through stories and silence. Let it all dissolve into the darkness behind your eyes. Let the 100 facts become 0 facts, emptiness full of everything, the sacred nothing from which all somethings emerge. The journey is complete, the circle closes, and in that closing opens infinitely. Sleep well, dear traveller, sleep deep. The eternal awaits you in your dreams and greets you again when you wake. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace.